thank you all for coming out this Monday night. It's just, this is our first real public meeting, so it's good to see some folks showed up for it. That would have been kind of discouraging. I'm Gabe Preston with RPI Consulting out of Durango, and we were selected by the city to run this planning process, which is going to go for more than a year. So if you track this sort of thing, you're going to start to finally realize that I'm only human by the end of it, which is too bad. But I do have some other team members from RPI here. Steve Mullen, he's our physical planner, designer, GIS mapper extraordinaire.
You'll love me by the time we're done.
And then we've got Iris Knott, and she's probably sent you some emails and that sort of thing. And Iris, I have to keep her like within 50 feet of me, or else I lose control the entire day. So
She picks up lots of pieces.
yeah, exactly. So we're here tonight to get some initial input on the Alamosa comprehensive plan process, which is just the first part of many different processes. I'm gonna, before I go on too much more about this, I'm gonna have Heather stand up and give a little introduction, because she's my boss right now.
So for these meetings here in the beginning, we wanted to offer a little bit of an introduction of why this is important. And there's actually two very different reasons why. The first one is at the end of the discussions, we will have a planning document that will help provide direction on what the priorities are of the community. So when City Council sits down to look at their capital projects, when they sit down and think about programming and activities, this gives them a document that has collected the public's input on what they want to see, what the priorities are. We don't have unlimited funds. We have unlimited dreams, but not the funds to necessarily pay for all of them. So that's part of the reason we need to have a planning document. The last one that we did for the city was in 1997. So that's almost 20 years old. So think of the changes that have happened. People have moved, they've moved in, they've moved out. We've seen a lot of changes in leadership, and the priorities have changed. So that's why this planning document at this point in time is important. The second reason, though, is actually, to me, something that jazzes me up more than getting a planning document, and that's the process itself. How many times does the city undertake this big of a process to collect public input, to have discussions around what's important to the community, what's not important to the community, what should we be focusing on, and to try to gather as much input from all our different backgrounds and try to shape a vision for us. And when I've seen other communities do this, it's that process that brings us together. Sorry, it's that. Let me take one quick drink. It's that process that brings us together. Can I have your mic?
Sure.
You can just use it like a regular mic. Don't put it too close so your glasses out.
It's that process that brings us together. And if we're going to succeed as a city, succeed at whatever the vision is we create through this process, it's bringing all of us together. We can have the school district head in one direction, we can have the city head in a different direction, we can have our economic development partners heading in a different direction, the county heading in a different direction. If we don't start heading in the same direction, we're not going to succeed at whatever the vision is. So, is this a city plan? Yes, it's a city plan. But are there going to be topics that come up that are outside the control of the city? Yes. And it's okay to bring those up because we can still have a platform to process that. So for me, the process is what it's all about. It's about touching people, getting them involved, and collecting the information that's out there. So that's why this is important. It is a one-year process. So please, we're going to have surveys. We're going to have more meetings where people might even be sitting down and digging into these topics even further. So please remain engaged and talk to your friends and neighbors and get them engaged as well. Thank you.
right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this process, just really quick. I'm not going to go on too much, but here we are right now. We're trying to develop a vision and goals, and this goes on actually. I mean, this is just the beginning of it, but we needed to get started on it right away. And so, one of the things that RPI Consulting and the City of Alamosa agree on deeply is that when you start a community planning process, the first place to start is with an economic development strategy. Because a lot of what we talk about is things that we want for the future, right? Well, we need a strong economy to fuel our ambitions, right? If we're going to be ambitious, we need the funding and the prosperity to be able to do what we want to do. And there's, we've got some numbers out. You can go onto the city website. Super obvious link to the comprehensive plan right on the main page. And there's a little slideshow under the comprehensive plan page that goes through some economics and demographics. We have some of that here tonight. But the numbers sort of speak for themselves. A lot of people in this community really struggle to make a living. But there's some people that make a great living. So it's especially important, I think, for Alamosa because we have a lot of potential and there's a lot of people out there that would like to expand their livelihoods. So let's work on that first. Really very directly related to the economic development strategy are our core services, facilities, infrastructure, and our assets, our natural assets, our recreation assets. That is very intertwined with our economic development strategy, right? So I say we start off with an economic development strategy. Really, it's kind of the framework for the rest of the plan because all of these things on the list relate back into economic development, right? Economic development in and of itself, some people might think of it as, well, it's incentives for new development, and some people might think, oh, it's recruiting new businesses from the outside. Yes and yes, but it's a lot more too. It's about developing the place that we live in and making smart investments, particularly with our public assets, so that we can get the most bang for our buck, and so that we're on track. So that really the economic opportunities and the characteristics of this community and the values of this community are aligned. That's when we start to look at our core assets and infrastructure. There's as Heather referenced, there's meetings and communications all throughout this. We're going to regroup for another couple sets of public events right down here where we start talking about how do we implement our economic growth strategy and our core facilities and assets strategy on the land itself. So we start to make maps and describe visually some of these ideas on the ground. So we're going to get together at that point and review where we are so far on the plan, and it kind of culminates here. One of the things that I'm the most excited about with this plan is that the city had the foresight to program in a downtown needs assessment with actual budget and time for us to work on and really focus on downtown. We need to get through a lot of this bigger picture policy and the comprehensive plan first before we're going to be ready to tackle downtown. But we're going to spend some time downtown. We're going to talk with business owners. We have a whole public involvement program that specifically focus on downtown. We have a fellow by the name of Jim Hoke, who's works for Thomas & Thomas out of Colorado Springs. He's a downtown designer, so he actually knows how to go from, boy, wouldn't it be neat, to here's a couple of sketches for how, alternatives for how this could be. And he also understands CDOT and parking, which are pretty important for this community anyways. And then finally, we're going to essentially rework the land development code, the zoning code, the code that people use when they want to build something or do something differently. So we're going to rewrite that thing, given the guidance that we get from this process. So quite a bit of work to do, a lot involved. Does everybody have a keypad unit? last morning. Raise your hand if you do not have one. You have one? Oh, here, each one. So I just wanted to get this. So before we go into the slides, we need to practice pressing actual mechanical buttons. I know it's been a long time with touch screens, but these you actually have to use your thumb and physically press the button. You should get one little blink when you press one of these buttons. And if it's just dead, that means it's out of batteries and we need to get you a new one. If it continues, after you punch it, if it continues to blink at you, we need to get you a new one. So is everybody getting one nice little amber flash in the light there? Okay, so the other key instruction about these pads is do not press go. That will unleash Steve Mullen in a way that you do not want to see, okay? So do not press go. The other thing, yeah, last time, yeah, there was stuff broken last time somebody pressed go, so won't do that. These keypads allow 10 responses, and 0 is 10, so you have to stretch. You got to stretch your mind a little bit. We don't use the letters. It's all the numbers on these slides that we're going to show. And if numbers don't turn up on the screen, please let me know, and I'm going to hand the show over to Steve, and I'm going to run away. So, all right, so here we go.
Well, the other thing you might mention is that if when there's only one answer, you can change your mind as many times as you want to, but only the last one is what correct.
Yeah, it records what your last response was. And there's multiple responses, so we're going to do some practice questions. Now, the other thing is that with the exception of the thumbprint scanner that's embedded in these things, it's completely anonymous. So, but we'll send that off to the federal government and let them deal with it. But, so we're going to do a little test slide. I'm going to explain some things. Just watch this screen come up for a second. See how that's red? That's no good. You have to wait for that to turn green. So if you try to respond before that turns green, it's not going to record your response. You have to remember. And it takes a little while. It's got to think about it. So this is a really important question, and I don't want you to lie. You don't lie to me.
You push it good and hard. Push it twice. Make sure it gets it.
Yeah, you want to make sure. See, and then we can see how many responses. We've got 30 people, 32, 33. It's good. This is great. All right, so let's see what happens. There it is.
Never. How many never?
All right, so bunch of troublemakers in here. Okay, now this gets interesting, right? I don't know if we have any top threes, but these kind of questions allow you to pick more than one choice for prioritization. We're going to do this a lot. You might be almost slightly annoyed by how much we're pushing you to think about your top priorities. One way to think about keypad polling is that it's a group photo. We're trying to take group photos about these pictures, about these questions, and everybody gets to be in the picture. But we're not overthinking. We're not going to do statistics on this. We're not going to do correlations and that sort of stuff. It's a group photo snapshot of your
We call
values.
it a nose count, haven't we?
A nose count, right. Okay, we're almost there. I thought we had 33. Wasn't that what was up there last time? There we go.
All right, close it.
All right, now we're just getting fancy and you can't even read it, but people are admitting that they drive cars. Now see how this adds up to more than 100%?
Walk and bike.
Yeah, that's because everybody's got 3 responses, so the total should be something around 300. Yeah, but you don't even have to select all 3 if you don't want. But walking, biking, let's see, not a whole lot of ATV, not a whole lot of ATVers in here.
Scooter.
So we're getting the hang of it now. This should be, now remember you gotta wait for this. This should be relatively easy.
before. Fine.
All right, so we've got some unincorporated folks. At least one person in here from another community in the SOL.
He's from Denver, it doesn't count.
Good evening, sir. Where do you come from tonight?
That's that 3% right there.
Okay, now we're getting serious. That serious. So here's our income, right? Blue is Colorado, orange is Alamosa. You can see what's going. I mean, maybe we could have compared this to another community, but it tells you a lot about the struggle to make a living in this community, and that the poverty rate is actually pretty high here. It approaches I think 50%. So this is a tough place to. It's a tough place to make a living, I think. We need to work on that. Here's the job, the amount that the jobs pay in Alamosa compared to the state as a whole. So we do pretty well. This is wholesale trade here. We're even Steven on construction, behind in a lot of other places. Now that's not unusual because this, when you talk about the state of Colorado, you've got the whole Front Range. And the pay is higher out there because it's the Front Range and because it costs so much more to live out there than it does to live out here in the San Luis Valley. Here are the percentage breakdowns by sector for employment in the county. We can't get this for the City of Alamosa, or we can't get it reliably. Government's pretty high because it does include the college employment. You're going to have your health services in here, possibly some of that mixed into this category as well. But it actually looks pretty balanced, especially when you consider the fact that you've got 8% agriculture of your employment, which is a lot higher than any other mountain county that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, agriculture is a real industry here. It's not just something that we talk about that used to be. It's still here. So, we're getting into some new territory here. See how it takes a little bit longer to think about these bigger questions. A lot of the slides that we're going to go through are like this, where we've been out interviewing people. How many of you have been interviewed by RPI Consulting so far? So there's 4 or 5 people in the room right here that have already been interviewed by us. So we've been out talking to a lot of folks for a couple months now. And that's how we came up with these lists of different ideas for what we want to do with our parks and recreation. In this particular case, we're talking about economic development. So you can see how we're thinking about economic development. It's kind of a lot of different things. Communications infrastructure is separated from core infrastructure because cities typically don't provide directly communications infrastructure, although some do. So this is a top 2. You can pick your top 2. And it doesn't mean that you don't like the other ones. It just means these are the ones that are most important to you. Okay. All right, so these 3 stand out. But we've got, people selected items throughout this entire list. This is something that we've heard a lot, that recreation and quality of life is important for the workforce, to attract people. We obviously love our downtown. And then, I think people are thinking about the workforce quite a bit, actually, in responding to these. So now, what do we think the most significant challenges are? Sort of a different way of looking at it. workforce. I knew people were thinking about the workforce, I knew that. Low wages, lack of higher paying jobs, that's something that we need to work on. And it's not an easy project, but certainly important. And then the negative perceptions and reputation of Alamosa. So, I'm kind of telling you how this event's gonna go as it goes. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but there's another part of this event where we actually get to write our individual concerns, our individuals' hopes for the future on sticky notes, stick them to these posters, and then talk about it a little bit. So, we're not gonna pin you in the whole time with pre-done responses, but if something comes up in your mind and you really want to be able to express it later, then jot it down and be ready to talk about it later when we get to that second part of the exercise. There's really a lot of undeveloped land. So the first thing that we did when we got here is we met with the city staff for an entire day, met all the department heads, heard all the different perspectives internally in the city, and then we spent the whole next day. Pat Steenberg drove us all over the place, and we literally looked at pretty much the entire city. Not super up close, but we did notice an awful lot of vacant land, and we don't exactly at this stage know exactly what the status and ownership of all this land is. We will before we get to that next phase where we're talking about land use. But bottom line is, inside these city limits, down here where the most developable land is, there's a lot of undeveloped land. And then when we look at the downtown and the railroad corridor, there's actually a lot of redevelopment and development potential right near downtown. And really, probably you could pick almost any chunk of Alamosa and find lots and buildings that can be redone. So the planning jargon for this is infill. But I didn't want to say infill because I didn't want it to sound like we're talking about only urban infill. When we say infill, we mean working with what the land base that we have and utilizing it to the best we can. So, gotta wait for the green. That's for you all that just showed up. You have to wait for that to turn green before you use your clicker. So do you think that infill and redevelopment of antiquated buildings is preferable to expanding the city boundaries this time? Steve is going to talk a little bit at the end of this about how we're going to think about efficient use of infrastructure. That was not a very hard question for you all. You jumped on that quickly. Did we get everybody? There we go. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, so, wait for that. We have to think about, what the city's role is. That's one of our jobs as the planning consultants on this, is to really think about what's the city's role in economic development. Not all cities engage in economic development. The question is, should the city take the lead on growing the economy here? Or should the city actively engage local and regional partners, or is it sort of both of those? And by actively engage, I mean actively engage, not write a memo or send an email. Actually engage and mobilize some of the regional partners, economic development partners. Ready? So, this actually takes some resources. I mean, if the city's going to take charge of this, it takes resources. Do you think that's a good use of city resources? Should the city put more resources into economic development? So 14% say no. We acknowledge that. And But it does, essentially at first, a lot of it's leadership, I think. A lot of it is focusing, doing things like this, saying we're gonna have a planning process, we're gonna hire these consultants, we're gonna get going on this. And by the way, I'm gonna tell you right now, working for the City of Alamosa as consultants, it's actually working with them. Like this is a good step. They're very helpful, very responsive. So far we've gotten, every time we ask for information, we get the information. We asked for photos, we got photos. Not these photos, we didn't have time to put we didn't have time to put their really good photos in that they sent us today. But so here we are, Central Business District. We're going to move on to talk about downtown a little bit. This is the Central Business District as defined on the city zoning map. So we're starting here, but we sure think about how different areas around downtown relate. And some of this stuff along the railroad corridor and headed to the south here is potentially an extension of downtown, but believe me, after running around up here in these blocks, there's plenty to do up here right now. There's plenty to work on up here, but we're not gonna look at the city that way. We're gonna have every single square inch of the city is going to have some kind of future growth strategy about it. Not super detailed, but we're going to cover the entire city map with growth strategy. And maybe in the developed neighborhoods that aren't going to change, that's what we say it is. These are developed neighborhoods that aren't going to change. The places that have potential to change, we're going to talk about that. So we did a market analysis, and you can look at more of this information on the city's website. And we wanted to look at how the Central Business District relates to total sales in the citywide sales, right? The sales in the Central Business District compared to the total city, and then the number of establishments in the Central Business District compared to the number in the total city. So these percentages, what that means is 14% of the retail and food and drink sales occur in the Central Business District of the citywide sales. So that's really food and drink. This is actual traditional retail, and then there's food and drink broken out. But you can see that, it's like, you'd hope this would be a little different looking of a ratio, right? Because that's where you hope most of your eating and drinking is going on downtown. So, there's some work to do. But one of the things to point out here is that, the Central Business District, considering the size of it and considering the size of the commercial areas in Alamosa and the kinds of commercial we have, it shows up on the map. I mean, there's things already happening downtown. We've seen these numbers look a lot lower. So this is, it's actually encouraging, but it also shows a lot of work to do downtown. So this is a fun little question. What are the top 2 reasons you go downtown? Got it? There? Okay. We got 39 here. See, look at that. So that tells you there's potential down there, right? I mean, we're already going down there to shop and do business. Not a whole lot of hacky sack and that sort of thing going on downtown in this crowd, but some 10%, 10% of you just go down there to just hang out. And then some folks are saying, I just rarely go down there. So, encouraging, but work to be done. Now, let's think about downtown and sort of what we think the dominant species should be downtown. Should the dominant species be automobiles, or should the dominant species be pedestrians and bikes, or should it be something somewhere in between? 2. Nobody selected other, because we don't know what other is yet, do we? Just out of curiosity, I sometimes I'm standing up here and I think, boy, wouldn't it have been cool to include a slide that says, what is it today? So what is it today? Is it designed for cars mostly?
Yes.
Yeah? Raise your hand if you think downtown is mostly designed for cars today. Okay. So we have some work to do, right? We have some work to do. It's not right now necessarily the way that we want it to be. So now we're getting into a related topic. Remember that green. We're getting into a related topic right now, which is how do we improve the appearance and the function of downtown? We talked a little bit about what we want it to be, what's the dominant species. There's a bunch of ideas for things that we've heard people talk about that they'd like to see downtown. I think there's going to be a lot more ideas that come out, and this is great material for the sticky note exercise that we're going to do if you have additional ideas. Is there any jargon in here? Somebody, no, it's not too bad. I think we weeded a lot of the jargon out.
Facade.
Facade is a bit, everybody knows what a facade is, right? It's the front of the building. It's the gateways. Everybody understand what a gateway is? Does that make any sense to people? Yeah?
We don't do it on the jeans.
Okay, okay.
I forgot about facade, what it meant. It was too big a word.
And it had that little French thing underneath it. That throws you off. Okay, ready? No? Does anybody attend this church? Wow. We're guests. All of us. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. A little bit of everything. I mean, a little bit of everything.
Landscape.
Yeah, landscaping, facade improvements. These are some of the easier ones. Public arts and murals. Little bit of interest in pockets of green space. I don't know. We'd have to really look at where would you have a pocket of green space downtown, I think, first. So, again, a related question. Sometimes we just have to break these things down because we only have 10 responses. We can't hold that much in our heads. But this is really about trying to increase business. So a lot of that stuff in the prior slide you were talking about, a lot of that happens in the public right of way, except for maybe the facade improvements. So a lot of the stuff that we were talking about in the last slide is happens on a piece of ground that the city and or CDOT actually owns. But it's public right of way. There's a whole other part of downtown on the back side of the block faces, right? That we have to think about. And this right here, this is part of it. And this was a comment that the staff actually added to this question when we were having them review it. And I think I understand now. I understand why that is now. But we'll see if any of you.
Which one was that?
The expanded and user-friendly parking. Ready? Got it? 3, 2, 1. Polls are closed. Wow, okay. So redevelop Highway 160 East Rail, that's gonna make Steve really happy. He gave us like a 15-minute lecture before you guys got here about that, so we're all.
Preconceived design notions, I'm not gonna be very much.
And then a lot of talk about this. See, now I'm starting to get this now, because I've been talking to people about it sort of all day. And facilitating the occupancy of vacant storefronts. There's a lot of thinking about how to do that. That's something that in small town Colorado has not been done deliberately very much, but there are others out there that are starting to work on this. So we're not going to have to necessarily be the first ones to tackle this, but it's a new field of actively trying to figure out how do you occupy vacant storefronts downtown. especially in historic downtowns. This is our favorite. See this, here we are on our site visit, looking important. And this is the beautiful park that was built with the Kaboom grant and volunteers, right? All came out and built that, which is a great story. And then here we are, all looking sort of chilly.
Waiting for a duck.
And we're looking out here, you know, you can see Pat just looking right out there across the river, and he's thinking, boy, we could, you know, I mean, here we are, we're right here on the edge of town, right? And there's this river, and we're all sitting there going, boy, we could have some fun out there, right? That was sort of the conversation going on. So that's just one of the priorities that we came up with here. We have there's another slide coming up that is in a different part of the slideshow that actually asks about the facilities, like the actual facilities, like the ice rink and the rec center, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to kind of break these things down. But know that question about those kind of built facilities is actually coming up. Okay. See, that's why I start bugging you. Okay, here we go. Hey, so there's a tremendous interest in working on our outdoor recreation assets here, and I'm surprised by that actually a little bit, that there's as much interest given the other goodies that are on this, but I'm also pleased that some of the folks in here thought about the existing parks, because there really are a lot of parks here, and a lot more potential, I think, in the future. So here's the city-owned open space. The ranch actually kind of goes all the way down here, but beautiful piece of property. City owns it. I don't know whose idea it was to buy it, but good idea. Whoever it was, good idea. Good idea.
We say whose idea it was.
Yeah, say whose idea it was.
Mike Hackett.
Mike Hackett?
Yeah, he's no longer with us.
Cheers to Mike Hackett on that one. Good thinking.
20 years. Haggard Park.
So this is a pretty simple one, but I maybe should clarify this right here, because it's hard to fit this on one line. You know, these would be potentially small businesses along the river. There's enough land there to where you can do some things that relate to it. Keep it the same. Do we want to develop it? You know, we're being a little vague about what exactly that is, right? Because we don't know yet. We want to just sort of get the barometer on, I could see some changes out there. Knowing that the overall approach with the river corridor, I think, is that it's a natural feature, right? We're not going to go in there and just pave it and do putt-putt golf or anything like that. Well, maybe. Yeah, with the frisbee golf. We saw people out there playing frisbee golf in like 20-degree windy weather. Hardcore. Okay, ready? Tim? No? Oh, all right.
Someone woke up, huh?
Yeah, we got it going now.
All right.
Open-minded. I think there's a way to sort of change it and also sort of keep it the same if we're careful about how we do it. Now, we're not going to design the ranch in this process. We're going to get ideas and that would sort of lead to maybe another level of planning about the ranch. We're going to get good input about it, solid strategies. We're not going to draw up the plans.
It needs a master plan of its own.
Yeah. So, I mean, Steve's going to doodle on it a little bit. I can guarantee that. But
Try to smell.
yeah. So housing. I mean, housing's all, this is all part of the same thing, right? It's like economic development, quality of life, housing. There's an actual house being built out in, on the, northwest Alamosa. I think that's where that was, yeah. You know, beautiful town street here, some apartments. It's quite a diversity of housing already. But we need to ask this question. Is there any jargon in here? You know, moderate income versus affordable. You know, moderate income is kind of like middle income. Is it actually, you know, for people that are making 60, you know, 50 to $80,000 a year or so, whatever that range is that makes it moderate here? Is it possible to get a home for moderate income earners? That should say ownership. I think I forgot to write the rest of that word. Sorry about that. Affordable ownership. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Almost all of the above. I mean, that's as close to all of the above as you can get, with some emphasis on ownership. So we'll have to definitely take that into consideration. In a lot of communities we've been working in lately, this is exactly flip-flopped between the rentals. So, city facilities and core services. Anybody know what this is? What is that? Hey, this is an educated. I mean, not anybody could pick that out. I mean, and it's actually our water treatment plant, right? Does anybody know what this is? What's that right there? Yeah, the glass crusher. All right, good.
Greatest thing that's happened in
Yeah.
Who needs a football team?
Okay, so this is the one this is the one I was warning you all about, where we were going to ask about all these kind of built facilities. There's actually more that we could have in here. We just kind of ran out of options.
cemetery office, I'm gonna have to visit that.
We have a cemetery office.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody, what's the guy's name that's in there? I can't remember this.
Solomon.
Yeah.
We're gonna get a new police station.
Justice Center.
Oh, Justice Center, sorry. Thank you, Hal.
Does everybody understand that clarification? Okay, ready?
No.
No, you have to think about this some. All right, I'll step back. All right, now we're there, right? Okay. Interesting. Interesting. See, the cemetery office is a place that people know about.
A memorial.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that the staff had to remind me to put in there. And I was like, oh, cemetery office, look, a third of you picked it almost, so a quarter of you. So there you go.
Oh, the ice cream is there.
But the fairgrounds, I'm curious, when we get to the sticky notes, I'm curious as to what people think about the fairgrounds. Because that's one of my things I think about all over the place. What do we do with these old fairgrounds in a world where the whole cowboy and equestrian thing is just not, it's not what it used to be. It's
It's
not,
big here.
it's big.
Very big here.
All right,
So it needs to be spruced up.
get it, okay? All right, I get it. All right.
That's exactly what that site's telling you right there.
I know. Well, I think it's great because I'm so far I've been kind of getting some responses that I didn't expect, so that's good. That's why we're up here. This is a pretty simple question.
Depends on what size.
to where you're not scared.
You're not talking about like break-ins, you're talking about being killed or.
Nervousness, yeah, I'm talking about public safety. So it could be feeling like you could get mowed over by a car at any time. Could you end up in a situation that you're not comfortable with, people breaking the law right nearby? Okay, ready? So there's some work, right? There's some work to do there. But it's not, we didn't get a whole lot of response for not safe, so. So this question is about, do you think that the city offers good service to its citizens and its businesses? When you go, and you got to be honest about this. I mean, I know there's some people from the city here, and we have the thumbprint scanners and all that, but go ahead and answer that one. Are people abstaining?
Is that an option?
Well, either way, it'll read your thumbprint as undecided, so it's up to you, really. I mean, okay, here we go. I think that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But hey, everybody, there's always room for improvement, and I'll tell you what, they're thinking about improvement down there all the time. Transportation. This is a pretty simple question, but it is important. It's okay. I'm going to look for jargon here. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. Can you take a sip out of your cup of coffee as you drive down the street without spilling it? Connectivity and efficiency. I think you know it when you don't have it. You don't notice it if you have it, right? It's just is there an efficient way to get from point A to point B without having to drive around? Intersection functionality and safety is pretty obvious. Signage, wayfinding. Public transit is something that has just come up recently here. I think. I don't think we're talking local transit, right? We're talking like local transit, not regional transit, local transit.
It's not the most important, me, it's the most important.
Okay, are we hung up on the transportation thing? I know it's only certain people can even bear to think about it, but okay, I'm gonna call this one. All right, so people have apparently spilled their coffee, and possibly spilled their coffee either swerving around a cyclist, or maybe had to hop a curb to avoid somebody that was drinking their coffee on the road. Parking continues to be really important, I think, for this community. Okay, so we're going to give you some instructions, but first I want to let Steve up here for just a second. Don't go anywhere. We're going to move into the next part of this. I've got to give this a big save real quick here so we don't lose our
It's a good idea.
marbles.
If you don't save, you can have some really nasty results.
Yeah.
Keypad polling things. Fortunately, we're getting them recorded in. I've had to go into those things before.
So we push go and then go.
Yeah.
Apparently somebody did, all right?
Okay, so here, do you want a pointer?
I got one. Good. So I was just gonna give just a quick overview. You were likely the recipient of a little form like this when you came in, okay? Now, you have till the end of this meeting to fill this out, but I wanted to answer, to give you a little bit of overview about it. Originally when planning began, planning was like mapping, You know, it was about, floodplains and wetlands and steep slopes and a lot of that kind of stuff. Then they kind of went into this period where it was all about experts telling citizens what was good medicine for them. Now they're to the point where citizens are the experts, and we try to extract from citizens goals, desires, ambitions, et cetera, et cetera. Doesn't mean that mapping and stuff that has gone away, or even expert advice about the stuff. It's still all part of the process, but there's more and more public input. Literally, here is sensitive lands. This is kind of like where you don't want to grow, if floodplains, wetlands, all of those kinds of things. And it's very simple at this point. Where you have zeros, green, there's basically no constraints to development. Then when you get redder and redder and red, you have overlapping constraints. It's floodplains and it's wetlands and it's prime ag land and it's, but right now they're all weighted 1. And quite frankly, floodplains might be considered more important than prime ag land and so on. So you guys are going to be asked on a weighting scale of 1 to 5, how important each of those elements are. And we will have a local landscape sensitivity that reflects your local values. And here is growth efficiency. This is basically the bottom set of weighting you have on that survey is things like, proximity to elementary schools and police and fire and sewer and water. And, so it's response times and walkability to things like parks and so on. So, for example, if you don't want to live next to an airport, maybe that's a 1 or a 0. But you want to live next to an elementary school, maybe that's a 4 or a 5. So we weight them accordingly, and these will be custom maps we can use to evaluate the future land use proposals. So that's just a quick little overview on kind of the weighting for this right here. So go ahead and mark these things. And then there was 2 final questions on the bottom of that I'd like you to answer as well, and then we'll collect those at the end of the meeting, okay? So, like I said, we'll get into more and more of the kind of land use and so on in subsequent meetings, and then you'll have more and more of my involvement as well. And it's at that point I'll make it look.
Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to shift into the part where you all get to talk, finally. And so it's a little awkward because we're in pews here, but we want you to group into some groups somehow. We've got a whole bunch of these posters around. So the first thing you have to do is figure out how to group into a group, because here's what you're going to have to do. You're actually going to have to, at the end of this thing, you've done these, right, before? Somebody's going to have to sort of stand up and report out what your group came up with.
Spokesman.
Spokesperson for your group. But the instructions are really simple. There's 2 questions on those boards. The first page is, what do you treasure about Alamosa and don't want to change? Or something along those lines. And the second question is, what concerns do you have and what changes do you think we need for the future? So the first one is like, this is what we like about this place and we want to keep it that way. The second question is more like, here's what some of the problems that I see either today or in the future, but it's also about visioning and thinking about how we want to change. So change in this particular case is not, we're trying not to have negative connotations about it. It's sort of, what's the vision for change on that second sheet. So there's some rules to this game though. One is that we, as you can see, like we try to actually record input in these meetings so that it doesn't just flow out as hot air as soon as we start hauling the stuff out of here. So you want to try to write one fairly clear thought per sticky note. And so we have a mess of sticky notes. We're not going to run out of them unless you really go wild. So one pretty clear thought per sticky note, and try to say, so if what you treasure is parks, try to say something a little bit more about it. Give us a little texture to your thought, even if you need to reference something specific, right, to make your point. You don't need to write an entire essay on the sticky note. So we're going to start with the first page for a while, and we'll work on that for a bit, and then I'll call everybody in and I'll say, okay, let's go ahead and report out what we got for treasures, and then we'll move into the second part, or maybe we'll do the breakout at the end. We'll sort of see how we're doing on time. but somebody in your group is going to need to sort of take charge of the board and the sticky notes, because ideally, by the time we report back out, you've got some of the ideas grouped in the group so that you can sort of talk about the themes and some of the other, sort of the direction that your group went. And if there was something particularly interesting or controversial or wild that came out of the group, let us know. I mean, especially something funny, like we need that for sure. So, anybody have any questions about how this exercise works? Theoretically, you ought to be like communicating in a group. I know it's a little bit a weird angle here and all that sort of stuff in this room, but give it a try, and then we'll try and help you along.
I was thinking, couldn't we just like put these here in the middle of the pew and let the whole pew sort of kind of talk about them like that?
Yeah,
That's
and then maybe consolidate pews or. Okay, now I better save the session data. Of your board. Yep.
Am I standing here, going up there? What am I doing?
You can come up. Here, do you want to use this? It would probably help.
I can talk pretty loud.
Okay.
Did I sound loud enough?
Pretty good volume.
Okay. So we kind of group things as far as what do we treasure and want to preserve about Alamosa. One of the main things is the ranch, as well as the natural beauty around Alamosa, so that's something that's important. Also, all the events like the Ice Fest, the Summer Fest, different parades, Early Iron, the Demolition Derby. I think, again, we really enjoy all the different events that happen, and they're starting to really represent what Alamosa is and who we are. Adams State University was mentioned. I don't know why. No, Adams State University was mentioned. At the same time, obviously, what it does is it brings in diversity into our community. It brings in a lot of events, a lot of things that can happen. And then the other thing we looked at was the different places we have. So Cole Park being such a beautiful park, having the track around it, the river and that type of stuff, the disc golf course, the golf course itself. So those are things that we really value. Sound good?
Sound good.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So here we looked at, and we started off with the idea of sort of the safety side of things. So obviously drugs is an issue. The idea of having more law enforcement or having them be more, that presence being there, and the crime rate, but also with the idea of not just on the law enforcement side of drugs, but also the rehabs and things like that to help people. When we looked in here, the idea of increasing the pedestrian and bicycle facilities, the multi-purpose center for the kids with the ice skating, roller skating rink type thing, more playgrounds or things that can also for the children, larger focus on education and its importance, again focusing on the kids, and then public transportation. So especially for the college students in the wintertime, if they're trying to buy groceries, things like that, it is a little tough for them if they don't have a car. Then we looked at sort of the things, water, the agriculture, things like that, and sustainable renewable energy. How can we increase that and also make it available for lower income? The pride in property ownership, not having as much junk around some of the houses, not having overgrown weeds, that type of thing. The deer, we're starting to be a little bit populated with deer, and also the Humane Society type thing with lots of kind of animals running around. Some ideas that maybe to help expand and grow is a railroad crossing by Walmart. So the idea to open that up and facilitate more growth there. And also the UAVs, which also will increase economic development. And then the last thing is really focusing in on downtown, that idea of building that downtown parking, obviously huge part of that. Reopening the Hunt Crossing, so again, opens up that area, and I think that's it.
All right.
Great.
Good job.
Okay.
Okay, who's next? Who's next? Come on down.
How's everyone doing tonight? All right, well, with me tonight was Dawn, Andrea, and Scott, so thank you very much. They voted me in to get up here tonight to speak. And more importantly, what do we treasure and want to preserve about Alamosa? Number one, people. Culture, our heritage, most importantly, Adams State University. Southern Colorado, green chili also, so yay! Our ease of transportation, railroad, recreational opportunities here in San Luis Valley. Our river walkway, our natural beauty, our pristine mountains, our wildlife, our soils and our water, our open skies, our natural resources, the low noise that we have here in Alamosa, and also rural charm. All right. What concerns do we have about Alamosa and what changes are needed now and in the future? Local enterprise, variability versus corporate, businesses outside San Luis Valley. More local businesses, not big box. Absolutely, small businesses, let's keep those small businesses growing. Communication expansion, the drug use, crime, but more importantly, supporting our local law enforcement. Divided living economics, poverty, empty storefronts, jobs for our youth, more importantly, jobs here in Alamosa and San Luis Valley. Strengthening our education, water quality, arsenic, the wind factor, the renewable energy and clean energy, whether it be wind, solar, or hydro. Let's innovate and use those factors. Another issue is our soil erosion. With the high wind factor here in the San Luis Valley, everything's going to the sand dunes.
Gotta keep them.
Right? They keep growing on an annual basis. So thank you, and more importantly, thank you, Don, Andrea, and Scott.
Okay, who's next? Who's next? Okay. So this is ours. I don't know why I got chosen from our group because we had like great people, so I don't know why it was me, but we got quite a bit. To improve, we wanted to talk about, there's a lot of community values. We talked about small businesses and how they care about the community, the Rio Frio, and communities, festivals, like festivals that we have. We also talked about our friendly people, our creative friendly people, our heritage, tourists, newcomers, working together, family-oriented, Adams State, agriculture, the golf course, those were all really big things. And then one thing I really like, no light pollution. I like how we can see the stars here. That's really wonderful. And then proximity to everything, that you could walk basically anywhere, almost, you know. And then when we get to negative connotations or concerns, perfect. Okay, so we did a lot of perceptions, and so there was perceptions of like the town and how people think sometimes, that kind of stuff, that it's negative. General better pride to be from Alamosa. I think there's just a little bit more improvement that could be used for that. Then we had some other general things like drugs, alcohol abuse, community
directions, response time to like emergencies. And then we had down here a lot of transportation for college students and for other people. For people around the valley too, I know that a lot of college students that are out of the valley, they don't even get to see anywhere out of Alamosa. Like I brought some friends out of town and they were like, I've never been here. So then jobs was a huge one, more jobs, and yeah, sidewalks, a huge one about all of this huge cluster right here was beautiment and making landscaping and that kind of stuff for the community. So yeah.
Okay, keep them coming, keep them coming. Good.
Oh, there's the one. And look how nice and square it is.
We put them in themes, you know?
Is this
We've
a
got them lined out
surprise?
here. Yes. So what we treasure, of course, our outdoor natural resources, the parks, the stars, the clean air, the river, the dike, our libraries and our city hall and our rec center. We appreciate that it's been redone and what it looks like, and it's such a, when people drive over the bridge and they see it, it's a really good statement for Alamosa, so we really appreciate that. We really, and there's a lot of businesses right here where we appreciate our businesses, our large and small businesses, and how well they all work together. And the diversity of the kind of businesses that we do have, I think they're very important, and we need to remember that. We like our small community atmosphere. The other thing that we like is that people want to come back and live here. They may go to school here, they may go to college or the university or be a Vista volunteer, and then pretty soon they'll come back and say, I want to live here. So I think that's a great treasure for us to have. Also, our educational opportunities with Adams State and all of the activities that go along with it. And then we also really appreciate the train. We think that it brings some diversity to our community, so we're pleased with that one. All right, some of the things that some changes that we'd like to see, and a lot of these have been mentioned, but more parking downtown, the vacant downtown buildings, we'd like to be able to figure out a way to work with them to get them full again. One of the things that we talked about was the central business district. We've changed, and that central business district needs to be enlarged. I think it needs to take in maybe up to 8th Street, and it needs to go down State Street. We have a lot of businesses down those areas, so I think that's something that should be looked at when we're talking about zoning. Economic development for small businesses. Public transportation is a big issue. It was mentioned before, for a lot of different things. More trails and bike accessibility so people can ride back and forth and not worry about getting hit, and we can not worry about hitting them. So developing the river, we would love to see it developed like Durango and Salida has. We think that's a great opportunity. Working on our parks and rec in the ice rink. Recycling, we would like to see more things being recycled and it to be open more hours, if at all possible. Beautify the downtown and make it more inviting. Of course, economic development, the train, we love the train, but we also hate the train because they park all the cars in the way and we can't see our views. So that's a love-hate thing going on there. But we want to keep them and improve them. We'd like to see a stronger workforce. We'd also like to see some vocational training for our workforce. There's a lot of talk about there's no jobs. There are jobs. We don't have the trained people for those jobs. So I think that that's a really important issue for that one. Beautify our gateways. And one of the things that I think is really important while we're talking about this is that we do not exclude our businesses that are on either end. We talk a lot about our central business district, but we have a lot of other districts that have really good businesses that we can't forget. So that's an important part for what we're doing. Access to affordable housing, and then healthcare. A VA provider is really important. I think that that's something that we should work on. And it's been mentioned before, the drug issue is a serious issue. It affects our workforce, it affects our safety, it affects our police department and our hospitals and everybody. So it's not something that we don't all know about already. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wasn't dominated by engineers, huh?
All right, so we like the people and the artists and creatives that live here. We want to maintain a sense of community and a sense of social responsible community. We're proud of our colleges and hospitals and our new schools. We love our history, the railroad being a railroad town, and also the southwestern influence of this community, the Hispanic heritage. The preservation of older buildings and maintaining and restoring historic buildings. We find that to be a very important thing to do. Quality of life and small town atmosphere was really important. So when you talk about development, you got to think about not ruining the small town atmosphere. We believe it's important for all of our counties and cities to work together, and we treasure that when they do. We really love our clean air, our extensive parks and open space and ranch and river corridor. And we're happy we got a new court facility and all the other new infrastructure. We feel like it makes people happy to go to work, to be able to work in a space that they feel good in. We want our city managers and everyone else to feel good when they go to work every day, you know. And we love the events like Sundays at 6 in the new Society Hall. And I think that's everything on here. The university, we've put in here the quality and diversity of education, arts, theater that ASU provides to us. Those amenities in a small town of 10,000 people. And you know, I should have put here, which we didn't, is that we have a lot of things that do good things for our town, like a public radio station and a food co-op that's struggling, but we have a lot of really neat amenities that small towns of 10,000 don't have. We're very lucky.
Technical flipping here.
Yeah, flipping is an area.
Must've been how I stapled it, huh?
All right. What concerns do we have about Alamosa? Some of our trails we feel like should be expanded and extended, especially from ASU north of the baseball field across the new trail to the ranch. Some of our streets need work on. We need more support of our museums, people felt, and that people need to get paid a living wage. We had people write $15 to $20 an hour. Living wage is probably $20. People are concerned about our water and that the valley's drying up, and also concerned about sprawl as you build the city. Doing that infill is important, and then also figuring out how to do the new city with the old city, because Walmart and all that stuff's out there. We've got them, so all those businesses, we need to figure out a way to be together. Arts everywhere. We need that. I think it really helps economic development in the community. Need to have Alamosa work with other communities on economic development, not just Alamosa. We don't want to see the ranch get gobbled up with and non-wildlife construction. Let's see. We were looking at just some ideas around walking pathways between Main Street and the 6th Street. There was this idea that it doesn't always have to be on a street that the pathway happens. 8th Street redevelopment that we were talking about, and then also the development of the alley of those back sides of those when on the one-way pair. And gateways. There was a plan all around gateways in the Rio Grande that Richie Vendola did many, many years ago that we should get a hold of.
Yeah, find those, dig them up.
And Akita Kawanabe. They were pretty amazing. And then focus on arts development downtown, like they do in Grand Junction and other communities. Need to develop our alleyway, let's see. And I think that's everything. Oh, yeah, an Alamosa plan for the park, the ranch, and all of our open spaces. Drug abuse is on there. No problem.
Howdy gang, I'm Donna Mabry.
a lot of the things that we have on this board were talked about, but we'll go through it again. The things that we treasured and want to preserve about Alamosa is the small town feel and the community setting that we have here. We have a lot of welcoming people and concerned citizens in our community. We want to preserve the feeling of community belonging and a sensitivity to that. We also want to preserve our trails and continue to make it walkable around here. That'll just kind of continue with that small town feel. We like our natural resources. We want to preserve those. We are proud of our cultural heritage. We want to preserve our culture. And then the feeling of potential here that we have in Alamosa, with this historic district in downtown, even our buildings here, even our residential areas that have, there's wonderful bungalows and older homes that have charm, and so I think that's important, or we thought that was important. We wanted to preserve locally owned businesses and unique, one-of-a-kind businesses. We also liked the fact that there was sort of a lack of commercial businesses here. I mean, we do have Walmart, we do have Chili's, and some of the other big names, but encouraging smaller, unique businesses. And we also like our community events that we have here, like the Early Iron and Rio Frio, and the music events that we have at Cole Park, society halls, amazing, parades down Main Street. I think we want to encourage some of that too and treasure that. Best job of flipping. Yeah, I give you a 10 on that. Okay. Some of the concerns we have about Alamosa and what we want to change for now and in the future. This is a common theme, concern about drugs, and that's just how it is right now. Beggars, panhandling, some blight. We have empty buildings in our downtown that people, we feel, just drive through this town and don't really care to look left or right when they're driving through because it's empty. Let's see here. Here's a big long one. Let's see here. There's too many offices on Main Street, and instead of encouraging small and unique businesses or restaurants, let's try to do that instead of having offices instead of, where people drive through. Graffiti. Let's see here. A cohesiveness with signage and streetlights. Maybe develop some sort of brand for Alamosa. Alamosa means cottonwood, so let's have a cottonwood tree on every street sign or something. The downtown seems like it's sort of shriveling up. I know that we want to preserve this, but we also want to make it cohesive with some of the businesses we have in the west too. Downtown's big though, since that's kind of a big impression for people when they come in. Also, we want to try to hopefully get some more kid-friendly spaces for winter activities. There's a lack of things for kids to do. Some link from Alamosa to Monte, maybe a Rails to Trails kind of thing, or some link between north and south, like continue the Rio Grande corridor there, south. Long-term vision, city planning, we appreciate having this opportunity to talk. Somebody said we're losing the airport. We need some commerce in that regard. And then better cooperation between public agencies. Did I miss anything back there? No? Okay. I think that's it.
All right.
This will be short and sweet. There was only 3 on our row. And some of these you'll understand why Damon Martin. However, some of those comments, again, we talked about the small town life and the sense of community, and I think that's been mentioned several times. We also felt like we treasured Adams State University and treasured the running culture. And we felt like that needs to be promoted, that it be on the signs on the outskirts of town, you know, that instead of home of 2 championship 18-hole golf courses or the land of cool sunshine, let's include the running that we're known for, and we have been known for. I was living here in 1968 when the Olympic athletes trained here for the running in Mexico City. We put down the proximity to the sand dunes, the clean air and the beauty of the San Luis Valley. We put down the Rio Grande River, and you know, someone else mentioned that to develop that like Durango or Pueblo does with the Arkansas, that we develop along that. We treasured the train depot. We treasured the old courthouse, and that when the judicial building is built, that we need to preserve that old courthouse for whatever use might come of that. And the proximity to the sand dunes, I think that's a treasure that we need to always keep in mind. And then some of the concerns, and a lot of these have been mentioned, the infrastructure, and you know, others mentioned the buildings and whatnot. I think we were leaning more toward the streets and the rough streets that we live on. We felt that a concern would be a diversity in retail, that we have more places to shop, that we don't have to buy our clothes at Penny's and Walmart, and that's, I guess we got Beals now, but there's not a lot of choices for that. Economic development, and we drew a line along with that, the empty buildings downtown. Is there something that we could develop economically that would fill the old Grove Theater, that would fill the old Alamosa lumber yard, that would fill some of that, so we didn't have that blight that was mentioned earlier. One of us put down the potholes and road maintenance. Keeping the sidewalks and the streets, keeping the sidewalks and the streets clean. I know after a snowstorm and the sand that is put down is, you know, the dirty sidewalks that we have, if there was a way to, and I don't know who's responsible for that, Heather, but, you know, to keep that clean. Certainly drug abuse that has been mentioned. We considered that a problem. We felt like that maybe a problem was a lack of cooperation between the different government entities, or the county and the city and the school district, and even the colleges. And I know Liz is here. But are they really working together as they could to make Alamosa the community that it should be? Another thing that was mentioned was more entertainment for young adults, and I think Damon mentioned this, that 18 to 30 year age, you know, what's here for them? And continue to improve our recreational opportunities, you know, our trail system, and other things like that. Of course, we also mentioned the deer problem. And, you know, I don't know that that's a solvable problem, but.
Steve's a really good shot.
Tag him, tag him.
Well, I suggested to the dog catcher one day a solution, but he didn't think that would work.
that everybody was?
You're just fine.
Am I
right
fine?
there, Yeah.
Oh, I'm dropping our suggestions. The main thing about Alamosa is the friendly people. And we know people, we all do. People that have come here, that come through town and just couldn't get over how friendly we are, and they came back. And just said they want to live here, they want to spend more time here. And of course, our group said we're delighted that we have the multicultural of hardworking immigrants who are here in our community and what they add to the community. Friendly people, youth and rec resources, soccer, outdoor sports, people willing to come together for common causes. That's something wonderful that we do. We really do. And then, of course, Adams State University, and along with that are the activities that Adams State promotes, both sports as well as educational opportunities for us. Cole Park and the Riverwalk, music at 6 in the summertime, the railroad, pennies and the brewery. I put those in. The library. We have a wonderful library. If you haven't discovered it, really spend time there. It's wonderful. And ASU's library is wonderful too. Somebody put down the animals, and I think what they mean is like we have a park for the dogs, and you'll walk around Cole Park and everything, you see all the animals, and kitty cats come out and greet you when you walk by. We like our neighborhoods. We have some nice neighborhoods. And of course the wetlands, I'm not going to repeat all of that, our trails and all of those great things there that we have. It's wonderful to have a recycling center. And that was started with community effort again. Community services and a lot of other people working together. Yep. And then the potential that they have, and then our churches. We have wonderful churches and church communities. It's not just the churches, it's their wonderful communities. And let's see, negative stuff is here too. The other side of the coin. Of course, alcohol abuse. And what we need to say is it's great to have Crossroads. It's great to have community corrections, what we're trying to do. The narcan or whatever it is, now that our police department and sheriffs are going to be driving around, it might save some lives here. Girls and kids getting abused and kidnapping. That little girl that disappeared, we shouldn't forget that. We don't know what happened to her. We need big sidewalks. I happen to live on First Street, and I would love to have a sidewalk that takes us all the way to the medical center. People come by with their little babies, and they have to go out in the middle of First Street and then down again and then back up on the street, in and out, according to who has sidewalks. Paving, lighting. By the way, the city is going to put lighting all the way in for Ross Street all the way through. I think that's wonderful. Folks who are unmotivated to work. I think Ronnie mentioned that. There's a lot of jobs, but some folks just don't want to work. Or if you're drinking or you're using drugs, you're not going to get work. So quit it and you can find a job. Okay. Help the mobile home parks improve. They need things for the kids to do there so they're not playing out in the streets. And I think if we just worked a little bit with the mobile home parks, that we could see them improve and make things better. Don't keep them isolated from the community. The separation between the economic classes. It exists in our town like every other town, and we need to work on that. We need public transportation. And it's not a good something of transportation. Oh, for the disenfranchised. It's not a good city for the disenfranchised for transportation. We have to find a way to keep East Alamosa integrated into the community and not forget it, not make it be a second-class citizen. Keep it just as beautiful and landscaped is the other part, especially driving into town. Seniors have kind of like, we have a wonderful bridge. It's just a beautiful facility. And then SLB Care and the other care centers do a wonderful job. But we don't have kind of like an independent living center for middle-income folks. And we also have disappearing middle class. Just thought I'd mention that. I'm one of them. We have diverse, they have diverse healthcare, but I think that's a positive. But anyway, it got put in this one. We really do have good healthcare. And I'm very grateful for the oncology department that we have here. They're doing a great job. We need to be more welcoming to newcomers, well, we are, and we also need more quality jails. Is that what it is? Good quality jobs. Big difference. Okay. Healthy living styles for the kids, more things for the kids to do, we've said that. Workforce development and training, retention, state budget for containment like Tabor. We need to do something about Tabor. And Alamosa, we can get rid of it. Tourism, we need more tourism, customer, all of those good things. So, good. Thank you. You get it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you all so much for showing up. Now, you know, the way to keep track of what's going on is to get on Facebook, get on the website, read the newspaper, listen to the radio, talk to your neighbors, but we're really relying on you all to go back home and tell people this is actually all right. You know, these folks are actually here to listen, and that we're not trying to, you know, cram an agenda down or anything like that. So please let people know that it's going on, and just stay in touch. You know, I think the website that we've got that is up on the City Hall, the City of Alamosa website. It's a link, a really obvious link, and it's got its own page. We're gonna start stacking more and more stuff on there, like the results from this meeting. So you've seen basically what the results look like for the keypad polling session. These things, you wanna talk about somebody that's good at reading crazy handwriting. Iris can read some crazy handwriting, because what she's gonna do is she's gonna tally all these things, she's gonna type them up, and then for the comments where there were a lot of different groups that said the same thing, we put a little number on it. You know, we say this was said by 6 groups out of, or 8 groups out of 8, or 9 groups out of 9, so that we know, and we essentially list the thing thematically. So this becomes part of the raw material that we carry into this plan. I don't know, Heather, do you have any other additional announcements?
I just want to thank everyone, and you know, we get a plan at the end of this, but again, it's this process, it's this coming together and working together. This is the stuff that is exciting, and so stay engaged, tell people, let's get more engaged, and let's make it a plan that reflects Alamosa in its entirety. So, thank you.
Okay, one last thing. During the course of the week, we're gonna get a web survey out and re-announce it. So if people didn't have a chance, we're gonna say, oh, you missed out big time. But if you couldn't make it to either one of these events, then we're gonna have a web survey that covers some of the same subject matter. It'll look a little bit like the keypad polling did. So if you wanna take the survey, you can, but this is, you did a good job tonight of giving input, and we really appreciate it. One last additional thing, take some pizza. We've got some baggies back there. So if you got hungry kids or spouses or whatever at home. And then there was somebody wanted to say something in the back there.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had a site for downloading all this information where you can go back to.
It's on the city website.
City website?
Yeah, just go right to the homepage, and there's a really obvious link right on the homepage. It'll take you to a webpage that we're going to continue to build. And there's a more detailed, I gave you a little bit of information, economic and demographic information tonight. There's a whole slideshow on economics and demographics. Soon, the results for all this will be up there, and we're gonna continue to build that website up so that you can keep up on what's going on, and announcements and all that, so.
I want
City-
to make this one point too, to add to what Heather said about the process, how important the process is. Plans that are successful are plans that have huge advocacy groups supporting them at the far end, right? That's what this public engagement thing is about, is creating advocates for that plan. You know, to endorse the plan, adopt it and implement it, that's how they happen. So that's not, I mean, that's something we need to keep in mind too as we go through this. Bring your neighbors back, you need more advocates.
All right, good job, everybody.